What if I told you that everything you do to keep your bait alive in the winter is not only a waste of time, but it might actually be costing you fish? It sounds crazy, I know. Today, we are digging into that dreaded moment every cold weather angler faces. You open the bait bucket and it's a graveyard. We're going to talk about why your minnows and shiners kick the bucket so fast in the cold. But stick with me, because we're also going to reveal the shocking truth about why this might be the best thing that could possibly happen to your catch rate. This is one of those secrets that separates the guys who consistently pull fish through the ice from those who just sit there freezing, staring at a dead bobber. So let me ask you this right now, and be honest in the comments. Do you believe a super frisky, lively minnow is always the best bait? Because I'm about to challenge that old school idea hard. For years, the gospel of fishing has been clear. Lively bait equals more bites. We've all been there, right? You spend good money on a dozen or two of the best shiners the shop has. Then you spend the entire trip fussing over them like they're newborn babies. You're constantly checking the water temperature, running the aerator until the batteries die, and meticulously scooping out any little piece of debris. The whole game becomes about life support. It's a battle against nature, trying to keep these fragile creatures kicking in a cold, hostile environment. And the frustration when you fail, it's real. You feel like you've wasted your money and ruined your chances for the day. This obsession is deeply ingrained in us. Our grandfathers told us, the fishing shows tell us, the guy at the bait shop tells us, the more action on the hook, the better. But what if that's only part of the story? What if that rule only applies when the water is warm and the fish are aggressive? We're going to explore why that old wisdom might be the very thing holding you back in the cold. So let's start with the number one killer of your bait. It's not a lack of oxygen, and it's not the cold itself. It's something called thermal shock. Picture this. You walk into a warm bait shop. The bait tanks are probably around 60 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe even warmer. Your minnows are comfortable and active. You buy 2 dozen, the shop owner nets them, and puts them into your bucket with that same warm water. Then you walk outside, it's 30 degrees. You put the bucket in the back of your truck and drive to the lake, where the water temperature is 35 degrees. In a very short amount of time, you are asking these little creatures to handle a temperature drop of 25 degrees or more. This is pure biological chaos for them. Their systems can't handle such a rapid change. It's like throwing a human from a sauna into a snowbank. The shock to their system is immense. Their gills flare, their heart rate goes haywire, and their internal organs basically shut down. This is the primary reason why your bait is often dead or dying before you even get a line in the water. Now let's talk about a common myth. Many fishermen think their bait dies in the cold because the bucket runs out of oxygen. This leads people to buy expensive, battery-powered aerators, thinking it's the ultimate solution. But here's a little science for you. Colder water actually holds significantly more dissolved oxygen than warmer water. That's a fact. So, in theory, your bait should have plenty of oxygen to breathe in that icy bucket. The real issue isn't the amount of oxygen available, it's the bait fish's ability to process it, especially after suffering from thermal shock. And while an aerator does help circulate water and can add some oxygen, its main benefit is often just breaking the surface tension, which allows for gas exchange. In a cold environment, the problem is rarely a lack of oxygen. The fish are dying from stress and rapid temperature change long before they would ever suffocate. So while your aerator isn't necessarily hurting anything, it's not the magic cure-all you think it is for keeping bait alive on a freezing day. The real killers are operating on a much more fundamental level. Here's the silent killer that almost nobody talks about: ammonia. Think about it. You have a dozen, 2 dozen, maybe even more minnows crammed into a relatively small bucket. Just like any living creature, they are constantly producing waste. That waste breaks down and releases ammonia into the water. In a large lake, this isn't a problem because it's diluted, but in your 5-gallon bucket, those ammonia levels can build up to toxic concentrations very, very quickly. It's like being locked in a small room with no ventilation. The air just gets foul. This ammonia burns their gills, making it difficult for them to breathe, even if there is plenty of oxygen in the water. It adds a massive layer of chemical stress on top of the thermal shock and confinement they are already experiencing. This is why sometimes you'll notice the water in your bait bucket getting cloudy or smelly. That's a sign of a toxic environment. Even if the minnows survive the initial temperature drop, the rising ammonia levels will often finish them off over the course of a few hours. It's a slow, invisible poison. Let's put it all together and talk about stress. We often think of fish as simple creatures, but they are highly susceptible to stress. Imagine the journey your bait takes. It gets netted at a fish farm, transported in a truck, dumped into a bait shop tank, netted again, thrown in your bucket, endures a massive temperature drop, gets sloshed around on the drive to the lake, and is confined in a small space with dozens of its peers while waste products build up. That is an incredibly stressful experience. Stress in fish, just like in humans, releases hormones like cortisol. Chronically high levels of stress weaken their immune system, disrupt their organ function, and ultimately lead to death. Every single step of the process, from the farm to your hook, adds another layer of stress. So when you see that minnow go belly up in your bucket, it's not because of one single thing. It's the grand finale of a long, stressful journey. It's death by 1,000 cuts, starting with thermal shock and ending with a toxic, crowded environment. They were already on their last legs before you even made your first cast. Because we're so desperate to keep bait alive, we sometimes do things that actually make the situation worse. Let's debunk a common but terrible piece of old-timer advice: dropping a handful of snow or ice into your bait bucket to cool it down. On the surface, it seems logical. You want to match the lake temperature, right? The problem is, this is the most aggressive and damaging way to do it. It creates pockets of super-chilled, near-freezing water that shock the minnows even more severely than just letting the bucket cool on its own. Furthermore, snow and ice from the ground can contain all sorts of contaminants, road salt, dirt, chemicals, that will further foul your water and poison your bait. A much better, though still not perfect, method is to slowly add small amounts of the actual lake water to your bucket over a period of 20 to 30 minutes. This process, called acclimation, gives the bait fish a fighting chance to adjust their body temperature gradually. But even this is just a bandage. The core issue is the massive initial temperature difference, and most quick fixes at the lake are simply too little, too late. Okay, so we've established why your bait dies. Now for the most important part of this entire discussion: does it even matter to the fish you're trying to catch? To answer that, we have to stop thinking like fishermen and start thinking like a cold water fish. When water temperatures drop into the 40s and 30s, a fish's entire world changes. As cold-blooded creatures, their body temperature matches their environment. This means their metabolism slows down to a crawl. They become lethargic. Their digestion slows, their movements become minimal and deliberate, and their energy levels plummet. They are no longer the aggressive, voracious predators of the summer who would chase down a fast-moving crankbait from 20 feet away. The cold water predator is an opportunist, focused on one thing and one thing only: conserving energy. Every single movement, every decision is weighed against a simple calculation. Is the energy I will gain from this meal greater than the energy I will expend to catch it? This brings us to the fundamental principle of winter fishing. Energy conservation is king. A big largemouth bass or a gator walleye sitting near the bottom in 38-degree water is not looking for a challenge. It's not looking for a fair fight. It's looking for the easiest possible meal. Chasing down a healthy, terrified, darting shiner is a high-risk, high-energy proposition. The predator has to burn precious calories to give chase, and there's a good chance the frantic baitfish will escape. In the fish's energy-based economy, that's often a bad investment. The fish simply cannot afford to waste energy on a chase that might end in failure. This is why fast-moving, aggressive lures often fail miserably in the winter. The fish see them, they register them as food, but their cold, slowed brains and bodies simply say, nope, not worth the effort. They will literally watch a perfect meal swim by because the cost of pursuit is too high. This is the crucial piece of the puzzle that most anglers miss. They're trying to appeal to a fish that doesn't exist in the winter. So, if a cold water predator isn't willing to chase a frantic, healthy baitfish, what is it looking for? The answer is simple: the easy meal principle. Now think about that minnow that's been shocked, stressed, and is now either dead or just barely twitching on your hook. To you, it looks like a failure, but to that lethargic bass or walleye, it looks like a jackpot. It represents a protein-packed meal with a near-zero energy cost. It's not going to run away. It's not going to dodge and weave. It's just there. It's the equivalent of having a fully cooked steak delivered right to your couch. You don't have to hunt for it. You don't have to prepare it. You just have to eat it. A stunned, dying, or completely dead baitfish sends a powerful signal to any nearby predator. Guaranteed food, no effort required. This signal is often far more appealing and effective in cold water than the signal of a panicked, fleeing baitfish, which communicates you're going to have to work for this one. Let's paint a more vivid picture. Imagine you're that big bass, suspended just off a deep weed edge. The water is ice cold. You haven't had a real meal in days. Your whole existence is about doing as little as possible to survive until spring. Suddenly, two options appear. Option one is a super lively shiner, darting and flashing all over the place. It looks delicious, but man, it's fast. To catch it, you'd have to launch yourself, flare your gills and chase it down. You might catch it, you might not. It's a gamble. Then option two drifts down. It's another shiner, but this one is limp. It's either dead or just barely pulsing. It's slowly, helplessly spiraling down right in front of your face. It requires almost no movement to intercept. You just have to drift over a few inches, open your mouth and flare your gills. It's a sure thing. Which one do you choose? 9 times out of 10 in the winter, the bass is going to choose option 2. It's simple biology. It's survival. It's choosing the free steak over the wild antelope. There's another major factor at play here, especially in the winter: the power of scent. In cold water, which can often be stained or murky due to winter turnover, a fish's eyesight is less reliable. They become much more dependent on their other senses, particularly their sense of smell and their lateral line, which detects vibration. A superactive, healthy minnow creates a lot of vibration, but it moves around so much that it can be hard for a slow-moving fish to pinpoint. A dead or dying bait, on the other hand, is a scent powerhouse. As it breaks down, it releases amino acids and other powerful attractants into the water. It creates a concentrated scent trail, a smell cloud that a lethargic fish can easily lock onto and follow. This is especially true when fishing stationary presentations like a dead stick or under a tip-up. The bait just sits there, pumping out a dinner bell of scent that says, "Easy food right here." In many cold water situations, scent is a far more powerful trigger than sight or motion. Let's also consider what is happening in the natural ecosystem during the winter. Winter is a time of natural die-off for baitfish. The old, the weak, and the sick simply can't handle the harsh conditions. They become slow, disoriented, and eventually die, sinking toward the bottom. The predator fish in that lake are biologically programmed for this. They know that winter means an abundance of easy, dying forage. They have spent thousands of generations learning to patrol the depths, looking for these effortless opportunities. So when you present a dead or dying minnow, you're not offering them something unnatural. You are perfectly matching the hatch of a winter environment. You are imitating the exact type of meal that they are actively searching for. A frisky, healthy minnow in some ways can actually seem out of place and unnatural during the dead of winter. You're offering them a clue that aligns perfectly with their ingrained seasonal feeding behavior. You're speaking their language. Think about how the bait acts on the hook. When you hook a very lively, panicked minnow, what does it do? It struggles violently, it swims in unnatural circles, it sends out vibrations of pure terror. To an aggressive, warm-water fish, this is a trigger. It looks like wounded prey. But to a neutral or negative cold-water fish, it can be intimidating or simply look like too much work. Now consider a minnow that is stunned or already dead. When you hook it and drop it in the water, it hangs much more naturally. It has a subtle, limp quality. On a jig head, it will just hang there. Under a float, it will drift gently with the current. This subtle, non-threatening presentation can be the key. It doesn't spook wary fish. It allows them to approach, inspect, and inhale the bait without any sense of urgency or alarm. The bait isn't trying to get away, it's just waiting to be eaten. For finicky fish, this can make all the difference in the world. Let's use a specific species as a case study, the walleye. Anyone who has spent significant time ice fishing for walleye can tell you this. How many monster walleye have been caught on a tip-up with a big dead sucker minnow or shiner just sitting on the bottom? The answer is a ton of them. Walleye are notorious scavengers, especially in the cold. They will cruise along the bottom, using their excellent sense of smell to find dead or dying bait fish. The classic tip-up strategy isn't about a lively minnow swimming around. It's about placing a large, smelly, easy-to-find meal in a high-traffic area and just waiting. The same goes for fishing with a jig and minnow. Often the bite comes when you let the jig sit completely still on the bottom for 10 or 20 seconds. The walleye comes in, sees the motionless minnow, and just sucks it in. They prove, season after season, that dead is not only good, but sometimes it is the absolute best presentation you can use. And it's not just for walleye. Let's talk about bass. We think of bass as aggressive predators, and in the summer they are. But in the winter, a largemouth's metabolism slows to an absolute crawl. They often sit completely motionless for long periods. They are not going to chase anything, but they still have to eat. This is where techniques like dead-sticking a fluke or a senko shine. And the same logic applies to live bait. Rigging up a dead shiner on a drop shot or a simple hook and split shot, and just letting it sit there can be absolutely deadly. The bass will eventually drift over, see this incredibly easy meal, and simply inhale it. It's a bite you can barely feel, just a slight tick or a mushy weight on the line. They didn't attack it, they just breathed it in. This is a side of bass fishing that many people never experience because they are always focused on action and movement. But in the cold, stillness is often the most powerful weapon you have. So, what this all comes down to is breaking the live bait dogma. We have to change our definition of what makes good bait in the winter. The goal is not to have a hyperactive minnow that looks like it's on a caffeine buzz. The goal is to present a meal that a cold, lethargic fish is willing to eat. This means we can expand our arsenal. The liveliest minnows in the bucket? Great, maybe use those on a slip bobber to cover a little water and attract attention. The ones that are stunned and barely moving? Perfect! Put those on a jig and work it very, very slowly on the bottom. And the ones that are completely dead, don't throw them out. That is prime bait for dead sticking, fishing on a tip-up, or just letting it sit on the bottom for walleye or catfish. You've paid for all of them. It's time to stop thinking of the dead ones as waste and start thinking of them as a specialized tool for a specific and very common cold water situation. It's about having the right tool for the job. Now, this doesn't mean you should intentionally try to kill your bait. A gradual acclimation process is still a good idea, not because it will keep them all super lively, but because it reduces the initial shock and allows some of them to survive longer in a stunned, sluggish state, which is often ideal. When you get to the lake, don't just dump them in. Take a small cup and over the course of about 30 minutes, slowly add a little bit of the cold lake water into your bait bucket. This gradual temperature change gives their bodies a chance to adjust. You'll still have some die-off, that's almost unavoidable, but you will also end up with a bucket full of bait in various stages of liveliness. You'll have a few active ones, a lot of sluggish ones, and a few dead ones. And as we've discussed, this is perfect. You now have a full spectrum of bait options to match the mood of the fish. You're no longer just a one-trick pony with a bucket of live bait. How you rig a less lively bait also matters. You want to enhance its natural, helpless appearance. For a sluggish or stunned minnow, hooking it lightly through the lips or through the skin just behind the dorsal fin on a very light hook is key. This allows it to have a subtle, natural flutter without being able to swim away powerfully. For a completely dead minnow, you have even more options. You can hook it through the lips on a jig head to ensure it hangs horizontally in the water. You can hook it through the tail so it hangs vertically, which can be a great look on a drop shot rig. Another deadly technique is to hook it through the back on a plain hook and just let it lay flat on the bottom. The key is to make it look as pathetic and helpless as possible. You're not trying to imitate a healthy baitfish anymore. You are imitating a dead or dying one, so rig it accordingly. Make it look like the easiest meal in the entire lake. Once it's rigged, presentation is everything. You cannot fish a dead minnow the same way you fish a lively one. The bait has no action of its own, so you have to provide it, or more accurately, you have to provide a lack of action. This is the art of doing nothing. The number one technique is called dead sticking. This means you simply cast the bait out, let it sink to the bottom, and let it sit. You can put the rod in a rod holder and just watch the line. Any movement you impart should be incredibly subtle, maybe a tiny drag of a few inches every minute or two. The goal is to let the scent and the visual of an easy meal do all the work. The same goes for fishing under a float. Set the bait to the desired depth and just let it sit. The wind and waves will provide all the subtle, natural movement you need. Resist the urge to constantly twitch and pop it. In the winter, patience and stillness are your greatest assets. The biggest change you need to make is not in your tackle box, it's in your head. It's a total mindset shift. For years, we've been conditioned to feel a sense of panic and failure when we look into the bait bucket and see still water. We've been trained to think that a dead minnow is garbage, something to be tossed into the bushes. You need to erase that thinking. From now on, when you see a dead minnow, I want you to see an opportunity. See it as your secret weapon for when the bite gets tough. See it as the perfect imitation of natural winter forage. See it as a tool that allows you to fish with extreme patience and subtlety. This mental shift will change how you approach your fishing day. You'll waste less bait, you'll feel less frustration, and you will start to appreciate the unique power that a dead bait holds. It's no longer a problem to be solved, it's a strategy to be deployed. So, here is your homework. The next time you go fishing in cold water, I challenge you to conduct a field test. You can't just take my word for it. You have to see it for yourself. If you're allowed to use 2 rods, set them up with an experiment. On rod number 1, put on the liveliest, most energetic minnow from your bucket. Hook it so it can swim freely. On rod number 2, I want you to take a minnow that is already dead, rig it on an identical setup. Cast them both out to similar spots and let them sit. Pay close attention. I am willing to bet that you will be absolutely shocked at how many times the rod with the dead minnow gets bit, especially when the fish are in a negative or neutral mood. You might even find that it outfishes the live minnow 5-1. This simple, on-the-water experiment will prove the concept better than any words I can say. It will make you a believer. And it will put more fish on the ice or in the boat for you all winter long. So let's wrap this all up. We've learned that the main reason your bait dies so fast in the cold isn't some great mystery. It's a brutal combination of thermal shock, stress, and ammonia poisoning. For years, we've fought a losing battle trying to prevent this. But the real takeaway, the absolute game changer, is realizing that in cold water, it just doesn't matter as much as we thought. In fact, it can be a huge advantage. The aha moment here is understanding the mind of a winter fish. It's a creature ruled by energy conservation. It wants the easiest meal possible, And that dead or dying minnow in your bucket, the one you used to curse, is the very definition of an easy meal. It's the perfect imitation of the natural die-off that predators are keyed in on all winter. This completely flips the script. Your bait bucket isn't a hospital you have to manage. It's a toolbox filled with different options for different moods. That dead minnow isn't trash. It's a precision tool for tough conditions. Thank you so much for watching and for being willing to challenge some old-school thinking with me. If this video gave you a new perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more tips that actually work. Now I have to ask you, what's the biggest or most surprising fish you've ever caught on a dead or dying piece of bait? I bet the stories are incredible. Share them in the comments below. The comments